Picture yourself shopping for a toy car. You stroll through the store, eyes darting between the vibrant models, each one promising a new adventure. You spot a toy car made locally for $10, and right next to it, an imported version for just $9. Saving a buck seems like a no-brainer, right? But to give local businesses a fighting chance, the government steps in and slaps a tariff, a special tax, on that imported toy. Suddenly, both cars cost the same, and buying local feels a lot more reasonable. Tariffs are meant to nudge shoppers toward homegrown products by making imports pricier. This helps local companies stay competitive and supports jobs at home. During the Trump years, tariffs made a big comeback, especially on steel and aluminum. The administration argued these measures would shield American industries from what they called unfair overseas competition, especially from countries with cheaper labor and materials. The strategy? Make American goods more attractive, protect and create jobs, and use tariffs as leverage in tough trade talks with countries like China, Canada, and Mexico. The hope was to revive factories and boost the U.S. economy. Officials claimed past trade deals had left American workers behind, and that tariffs would push other nations to negotiate fairer terms, leveling the global playing field. But trade isn't a one-way street. When the U.S. raised tariffs, other countries hit back with their own taxes on American products, sparking a tit-for-tat escalation. This triggered a worldwide domino effect, turning a tool meant to protect American jobs into a full-blown trade conflict. Suddenly, businesses and shoppers everywhere felt the squeeze. While tariffs aimed to help some industries, they quickly created headaches for others, especially U.S. farmers, who depend on selling their harvests abroad. Many found themselves caught in the crossfire, facing new barriers to their exports. Instead of just saving jobs, tariffs ignited a trade war that rippled through the economy. Some factories shut down, small businesses faltered, and uncertainty grew for workers and families. What began as an economic tactic quickly turned political, fueling heated debates in Washington and protests nationwide. The effects stretched far beyond the industries first targeted. The fallout was fast and harsh, especially for American agriculture. Farmers saw prices drop, markets vanish, and debts pile up. Some even had to walk away from their land. The next chapter belongs to the farmers caught in the middle, ordinary people whose futures now hinge on the outcome of a global trade showdown. For American farmers, selling abroad isn't a luxury, it's survival. Export markets are the backbone of their livelihoods, allowing them to sell the crops and livestock they work so hard to produce. Without access to global buyers, many farms simply can't make ends meet. When the U.S. imposed tariffs, countries like China, Canada, and Mexico hit back with their own, targeting American crops. These retaliatory tariffs were aimed directly at the heart of rural America, making it clear that farmers would bear the brunt of the trade war. Suddenly, U.S. soybeans, pork, and corn became too expensive for foreign buyers, who quickly found new suppliers. International customers turned to Brazil, Argentina, and other countries, leaving American farmers with mountains of unsold crops and shrinking markets. China, once the top buyer of American soybeans, nearly stopped buying overnight. Processing plants slowed down or shut their doors, and the ripple effects were felt across entire communities. U.S. agriculture lost over $27 billion in sales, devastating farmers who had spent years building global relationships. The loss wasn't just financial, it was personal, erasing decades of trust and hard work. Silos filled up with unsold crops, incomes plummeted, and many family farms faced collapse. Generations of effort were suddenly at risk, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on rural families. Tariffs also raised costs for farmers. Steel for barns, aluminum for equipment, and even imported fertilizers all got pricier. Every aspect of running a farm became more expensive, squeezing already thin profit margins. Farmers were squeezed from both sides, earning less, paying more. The stress was relentless, with bills piling up and no clear end in sight. To keep farms afloat, the government issued billions in bailout payments. These emergency funds were meant to soften the blow, but they couldn't replace lost markets or restore confidence. But this aid made farmers dependent on government checks instead of the market. Many worried about the long-term consequences of relying on subsidies rather than sales. Many felt trapped, relying on taxpayer-funded relief for a crisis caused by policy. The sense of independence that defined American farming was slipping away. It was a lifeline, but not the future most farmers wanted. They dreamed of thriving through hard work and open markets, not government intervention. The trade war's cost was more than dollars. It was a blow to independence and pride. For many, the scars of this period will last far longer than any financial loss. While American farmers struggled, Canada seized the moment. When U.S. crops became too expensive due to tariffs, countries like China turned to Canada for soybeans, wheat, and canola. Canadian exports to China soared, filling the gap left by American products. Without extra taxes, Canadian farmers sold more and profited, often at the expense of their U.S. counterparts. Canada's government also responded with its own tariffs, protecting local industries and encouraging Canadians to buy domestic goods. They prioritized Canadian steel and aluminum for public projects, boosting their own economy. The global market is competitive. When one country stumbles, another steps in. U.S. trade policies, meant to strengthen America, handed Canada a golden opportunity. Canadian farmers thrived, while Americans learned how quickly markets can vanish. The trade war was a windfall for Canada, but a harsh lesson for the U.S. Trade wars leave scars that don't heal quickly. The impact goes far beyond just a few bad seasons or temporary losses. For many American farmers, these scars are a daily reality, affecting their livelihoods and the future of their communities. The biggest risk for U.S. agriculture is losing markets for good. Once foreign buyers find new suppliers, it's incredibly difficult to win them back, no matter how competitive American products may be. When China switched to buying from Brazil or Canada, it built new supply chains and relationships that won't easily break. These new partnerships are reinforced by investments in infrastructure and trust, making them even more resilient. America's reputation as a reliable supplier took a hit. Buyers remember disruptions, and that memory shapes future decisions. Buyers worldwide now see the U.S. as unpredictable, and they're diversifying to avoid future shocks. This shift isn't just about economics, it's about reducing risk and ensuring stability for their own countries. Even if tariffs disappeared tomorrow, lost market share wouldn't return overnight. It takes years to rebuild what was lost in just a few months. Competitors have proven themselves and customers may not come back. The world has moved on, and American farmers are left trying to catch up. Rebuilding trust takes years of stable policy and effort, with no guarantee of success. Every misstep or policy change can set progress back even further. The U.S. risks becoming a smaller player in global agriculture. Its influence and market share could shrink as others fill the gap. Farmers may have to plant less, downsize, or leave the business altogether. Rural communities could face population decline and economic hardship as a result. The short-term goal of protecting one industry has put the long-term health of another in jeopardy. The ripple effects are felt across the entire rural economy. The shadow of these trade wars could last for years, reshaping American farming. Generations of hard work and tradition are now at risk. The cost of lost trust may be the hardest to recover. For many, it's not just about lost profits, it's about the future of American agriculture itself. The pain of the trade war didn't stop at the farm. It hit taxpayers too. To offset farmers' losses, the government paid out billions in aid, funded by everyday Americans. This created a costly cycle. Tariffs hurt farmers, bailouts followed, and taxpayers picked up the tab. Critics called it digging a hole just to fill it back in. Instead of investing in infrastructure or education, billions went to patching up self-inflicted wounds. The bailouts were a hidden tax, paying for a trade strategy that backfired. The approach raised tough questions about whether taxpayer money was being used wisely. The true cost of the trade war was measured not just in lost sales, but in billions diverted from other priorities. Every American shared the burden of this economic experiment. The U.S. trade war shook the foundations of global commerce. Countries that once relied on American products scrambled to find new suppliers, accelerating a shift away from US-centric trade. China, once the top buyer of US farm goods, signed massive deals with Brazil and others, reducing its dependence on America. Even after new trade deals, China kept diversifying, seeing the US as a risky partner. Canada and Mexico, too, started building ties with Europe and Asia, hedging against future US policy swings. The result, a more fragmented, competitive global market where America's influence is shrinking. By putting up barriers, the US encouraged others to build bridges elsewhere. Reversing this trend will be tough. The world has adapted to a less predictable America. The long-term consequence, a diminished role for the US in global trade. The effects will linger for years, shaping the economy's future. The world has moved on, and America must adapt. Bailouts are a crutch, not a cure. Billions in aid gave farmers short-term relief, but didn't fix the loss of global markets. This cycle breeds dependency, tying farmers' futures to government checks instead of customers. It distorts the market and makes long-term planning nearly impossible. Mixed signals from Washington, trade barriers on one hand, bailouts on the other, create instability. A healthy farm sector needs open markets, not endless government support. For American agriculture to thrive, it must stand on its own 2 feet. The path forward is smarter trade, not higher walls. America should focus on opening markets, not closing them, by negotiating deals that lower barriers and boost exports. Trade liberalization would make US products more attractive abroad and lower costs at home. Removing tariffs on key supplies would help farmers compete and invest in their businesses. Restoring America's reputation as a reliable partner is essential for long-term growth. Predictable trade policies give farmers the confidence to plan and expand. The best way to support American agriculture is to empower it to win globally, not to shield it from competition. A future built on open markets and opportunity is the strongest foundation for American farming.